We were talking about the corn harvest and the growing season in Kansas City from National Farm Broadcasters Convention with Brett Lehr from Agri on back roads of Illinois. I am looking forward to talking on our conversation in the convention. How are you, Brett?
Good. How are you today, Caesar?
I'm great, thanks. An agronomist for Agri-Gold in central Illinois. Could you tell our listeners that they were record yields in central Illinois?
Yeah, the yields were really good this year. We had a lot of early rainfall. I think that definitely contributed to the yields. It seemed like the early planted stuff finished out very well. We had some good moisture, and we really didn't get affected by that late season drought too much on the earlier planted stuff. But it seemed like the later we went with the planting dates, it could have been affected a little bit more. Another thing we saw too on the later planted stuff this year were the aphids, and that was a huge factor in some of the yields that were off slightly. But the earlier planted corn really didn't see the aphid pressure, and it was very good yields, like you said.
How is the beans harvest in central Illinois?
The beans were really good this year, too. I saw a lot of 85 bushel averages. It seemed like the earlier beans definitely were better than some of the later beans. And I think it's all how they finished. It seemed like the earlier beans finished during a really good time. In the later beans, it seemed like they almost ran out of moisture. And we actually planted some beans on March 4th this year, and we had some 95 bushel averages, which was awesome. So I think we can continue to look at that stuff and maybe plant beans earlier and earlier and get more yield out of those soybeans.
Brett, what is the yields for this season in McDonough County and central Illinois?
McDonough County was really good this year. I think for the majority, they had one of the better growing seasons from what I can remember. And I would say a lot of guys had some really, really good crops. They did have a little bit of wind come through. They had some really challenging parts early this spring. It seemed like the storms came across Iowa and McDonough County again this year. And it seems like that rainfall kind of hurt them planting early. But they did get a little bit of wind, but for the majority, they were really blessed with a really good harvest. And it seemed like yields were great throughout McDonough County.
Yeah, how are things in Pick?
Pike County was very good this year. We were blessed with some really nice rainfall, very timely. We didn't seem to have all the moisture early like a lot of places, and we got stuff planted in early April. So I think that was a huge benefit to us, and a lot of growers I work with in Pike County had record yields this year across the whole board for farm averages. So it was definitely a good year. There was a storage problem, which always is a good thing. So I think Pike County was an awesome, awesome year this year.
Could you tell us which is part in the state there were record yields in the fall in central Illinois?
For the year, I think Pike County really rings a bell to me just because of our growing potential. It seems like we're a little bit lower than the central part of the state just with our soil types, but Pike County this year sticks out to me just with how record yields we had just based on the amount of moisture and stuff. But we were really blessed, and honestly, too, the eastern side of Missouri was very good, too, just based on the amount of rainfall they had this year as well.
What is the yields for right now? That did you hear?
A lot of farms went 270 plus this year, which is phenomenal based on the price we had for corn this year. There were some 280s in spots, and obviously you'll have some lower yielding spots, but for the majority, I'd say 250 to 270 encompassed a lot of these yields on a lot of different acres.
Do you have any final thoughts or recap of our conversation about the corn yields and the beans?
I think a final thought would be next year is going to be a completely different year, and we have to take next year with a totally different outlook versus this year. I think a lot of times, myself included, we get wrapped up in what happened this year and try to make decisions off of it. So next year is going to be totally different with different challenges, and I think we have to take next year and look at it from what it is and be prepared what Mother Nature is going to throw at us.
Thanks, Brett. This is Brett Lehr from Agri-Gold on back roads of Illinois at the National Farm Broadcasters Convention in Kansas City, Missouri. I'm Cesar Delgado from back roads of Illinois.